Arcadian Vanguard presents The Wrestling News in your daily wrestling newscast for Wednesday, November 9th, 2022. Good morning, I'm Mike Sempervive. We begin with NXT broadcast live last night on the USA Network from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. In the main event, NXT Women's Tag Team Champions Katana Chance and Kaden Carter defeated Nikita Lyons and Zoe Stark to retain the titles when Chance pinned Stark. Stark would then attack her own partner, Lyons, with one of the title belts after the match, seemingly completing her heel turn. Following her in-ring attack last week on Toxic Attraction's Gigi Dolan, Alba Fire attacked another Toxic Attraction member, Jayce Jane, during a pre-tape segment. Fire then vowed to take the NXT Women's title next week from Toxic Attraction leader Mandy Rose. In other results, Brutus Creed was disqualified in his match with Damon Kemp for using a steel chair, which he continued to use on Kemp afterward. JD McDonough defeated Axiom via referee stoppage. Joe Gacy pinned Cameron Grimes. Charlie Dempsey defeated Andre Chase when Duke Hudson threw in the towel while Chase was trapped in an ankle lock. And Elektra Lopez defeated Sol Ruca in Lopez's first match in 3 months. After the match, she was attacked by Indy Hartwell. The show also included a vignette featuring the repackaged Donovan Dijak.
I've wiped the slate clean for a fresh start and left the past where it should be left. Understand, power doesn't come from a title or position. It comes from getting the entire world to cooperate and play by your rules. The ones who are forthcoming get a pass, but those who don't will be brought to justice. My form of justice.
Dijak was most recently seen on the main roster as T-Bar of Retribution and previously wrestled in NXT as Dominik Dijakovic. In some other WWE news, although the return of Sheamus to WWE TV has not yet officially been announced, the Irish wrestler has been announced for a meet-and-greet appearance at a cell phone store in Speedway, Indiana on Friday, approximately 8 miles away from the Gainsbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, where SmackDown is being held. Sheamus was written off WWE TV last month to take some time off due to his wedding to longtime partner Isabella Ravila. He hasn't been seen on WWE TV since the angle in which he was attacked by the Bloodline on the October 22nd episode of SmackDown. WWE's continent-wide African talent search officially began yesterday with a press conference in Lagos, Nigeria, featuring Omos, born and raised in Nigeria, and Apollo Crews, who is of Nigerian descent. Submissions are being accepted until December 18th, and the talent search is open to citizens of all African nations. A multi-day tryout is scheduled to take place in Lagos next February, which will include the best applicants as chosen by WWE. WWE will then choose some applicants from the tryout to bring to Los Angeles for WrestleMania week, with some of them potentially being offered full-time developmental contracts to go to work at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. In ratings news, coming back from one of the year's lowest-rated episodes of Monday Night Raw last week on Halloween, this week's post-Crown Jewel episode live on the USA Network from the Mohegan Sun Arena in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, gained back only a small amount of its audience, bringing in an average of 1.593 million viewers, up 6.13% from last week, according to Showbuzz Daily. In the hourly breakdown, Hour 1 of Raw drew 1.723 million viewers, which dropped to 1.646 million for Hour 2, and then dropped further to 1.411 million for Hour 3. The rating in the key 18 to 49-year-old demographic was .43, up 19.45% from last week's Halloween episode, according to WrestleNomics. Raw came in at number 6 on cable TV for the evening in the key demo, up from number 7 last week. Post Wrestling's John Pollock reported in Canada, Raw averaged 209,500 viewers, and 111,600 of them in the 25 to 54-year-old demographic on Rogers Sportsnet 360. Those numbers were down 19% and 23% respectively from last Monday's Halloween episode, which, unlike in the States, did not affect Canadian viewership. Raw ended up finishing 6th amongst sports shows in the country. Now with some news on the National Wrestling Alliance, here's the Wrestling News' Lou Kipilman.
A new customized NWA World Title belt has been made by the National Wrestling Alliance ahead of next Saturday's Hard Times 3 pay-per-view event, according to a report from Fightful Select. The main event of Hard Times will feature NWA World Champion Trevor Murdoch defending the title in a triple threat against Tyrus and Matt Cardona, and the Fightful report indicates that the new belt may have been made to fit Tyrus, possibly pointing toward a title change on Saturday. This is the second consecutive NWA pay-per-view in which Tyrus has challenged for the world title, following the NWA 74th anniversary show last August, in which Tyrus was a last-minute replacement for former NWA champ Nick Aldis. Aldis was removed from the August match due to critical comments made toward the NWA and Billy Corgan, and was suspended by the NWA earlier this week for similar comments made over the weekend. For the Wrestling News, I'm Lou Kipilman.
In news from Japan, in a press release issued this morning, New Japan Pro Wrestling announced Jeff Cobb would not be working the company's Tamashii events being held in the South Pacific this coming Friday and Sunday. The release stated, quote, Jeff Cobb, who was scheduled to appear on NJPW Tamashii events on November 11th in Christchurch, New Zealand, and November 13th in Sydney, Australia, will unfortunately be unable to appear due to personal reasons, unquote. As a result, Richard Mulu will step in for Cobb's scheduled match against Michael Richards on November 11th, and former IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion Robbie Eagles will take his place on November 13th against Carter Deems. A press conference was held yesterday in Tokyo by New Japan Pro Wrestling and World Wonder Ring Stardom ahead of the interpromotional event both companies are presenting on November 20th in Tokyo's Ariake Arena entitled Historic Crossover. The conference featured comments from New Japan chairman Naoki Sugabayashi as well as Stardom executive producer Rossi Ogawa. Following the announcement of the card, in which the main event will have Mayu Iwatani and Kairi facing off to decide the first IWGP Women's Champion, Ogawa said, quote, this is the first crossover event between two world-leading organizations. I think this is a real jewel in the crown of NJPW's 50-year history. Hearing the card rundown just now, you have title matches, mixed tags, real attraction matches, everything all together here. I hope the world's eyes will be watching and enjoy an incredible event, unquote. In action figure news, figure maker Powertown announced yesterday that it had acquired the rights to the Remco brand and logo and would be producing a new line of Remco wrestling figures. The original Remco produced the first ever line of wrestling action figures starting in 1984 featuring the stars of the American Wrestling Association. Powertown is co-owned by Steve Rosenthal and Greg Gagne, himself a former AWA wrestler and son of AWA founder Vern Gagne. The lineup for Series 1 of the Powertown Remco figures is scheduled to be announced in January. Powertown is currently in production on its previously announced series of vintage wrestling figures, including Bruiser Brody, Luthez, Stan Hansen, Vern Gagne, Kerry Von Erich, and Magnum TA. With some news from outside the ring, here's the Wrestling News' Lou Kipilman.
Maxwell Jacob Friedman is the latest to be cast in the Von Erich family biopic The Iron Claw from A24 Films, according to a Deadline report, with PW Insider reporting that he will be playing William Vaughn, the wrestler who worked alongside the Von Erichs as fictional cousin Lance Von Erich in the mid-1980s. Shooting for the film has begun, which accounts for MJF's absence from AEW TV leading into Full Gear. MJF joins a cast that also includes Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, Holt McCallany, Maura Tierney, and Lily James. The film will chronicle the rise and fall of the tragedy-stricken wrestling family. A release date is not yet known. For the Wrestling News, I'm Lou Kipilman.
And before we leave you today, we'd like to remind you that however you consume your content, you can find the Wrestling News 24 hours a day and 7 days a week across social media. On Twitter, follow us at Wrestling News AV. Our Facebook page is also Wrestling News AV. The Wrestling News can also be found on the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube page. And for those who utilize Amazon Echo devices, Just tell Alexa to play the Wrestling News Podcast, and remember to make sure you add podcast at the end. Once again, for daily updates, breaking news, and more, follow the Wrestling News across social media. And that's the news for today. If anything happens, we will be here to tell you about it. No clickbait, no paywall, just the Wrestling News. The Wrestling News is a division of Arcadian Vanguard, and the Wrestling Newscast is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.